The future of the programmer is one of the most discussed and probably one of the most misunderstood topics in tech right now. The one side says AI will replace all programmers. The other side says it's all just a hype. I personally think both sides are missing the point. A lot of the noise comes from what people call vibe coding, which is pretty much you describe what you want and watch the code magically appear. It is the most visible and maybe the most absurd expression of a much wider transformation that is driven by AI and is happening in the field of software development. And that is when you're doing it with a mainstream technology stack in, let's say, Python or JavaScript. It completely falls apart when you're trying to do things like that in a more niche, beyond mainstream tech stack that is maybe proprietary or just a little bit legacy. But the very same technology focused around large language model-based agents, if you use it deliberately, it can do much more. So let's meet Bob. Here he is. That's Bob right there. So with this, Bob is a full-fledged IDE with all the features that you are familiar with if you're using VS Code. I have been really harsh on vibe coding in the introduction, but still, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely look at it. So we're going to do a vibe coding example first. What I always like to use for those examples is Galaxium Travels. It's a company made up for demo purposes. What I have already created is this spec sheet markdown here. And this is a comprehensive description of what this booking system is supposed to be able to do. And creating a document like that is probably the most important thing if you want to create something halfway decent with vibe coding. Okay, let's get started. I just tell Bob to create a project based on that spec sheet and I can reference it here in the chat. Okay, it created a long to-do list. And well, let's look at this. And it's project structure, create project. Well, looks pretty good to me. For now, I mean, we are in the very adventurous vibe coding theme here, so we're just simply going to auto-prove everything. And it's done. Task completed. You just watched me vibe code an entire application. Ha! That was fun. So let's take a quick look at what actually happened. I mean, quick look is pretty relative because there's a lot that happened. And it took it 50,000 tokens, which cost 79 cents. Well, does it really work? Let's see. Okay, I'm just gonna copy that stuff straight from the README. This takes a moment. I mean, it's gotta pull all the images. That seems like that worked. Now we're gonna put that seed data, so it's just some fake data, into the database, so we've got something to work with. An error here. Let's just copy paste that over here. Okay, that's interesting. It explicitly asks me for the permission to run a system-wide command, which is a very reasonable thing to do. It fixed the issue, and kind of interestingly enough, it created a start shell script for us. Let's just try that. Is that here in the root folder? Yes. Okay, I had to take one more iteration because it had issues with ports already being taken, and it added some logic to the start script to like do something else when a port is taken. So it's supposed to be working now. Let's see. Let's go to localhost 8082 first. Oh, welcome to Galaxium Travels booking system. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. Let's see if it works. Let's try to get information about all the flights. Try it out. This does not need any parameters, I think. Yeah, let's execute this. And there we go. We got all our parameters here. Obviously, this is like way too early to say that this is actually working. I just barely tested if it runs and does anything, but that's not the point here. I've done this before, and what I would do now is ask it to create a few more tests and actually run a few tests myself, just literal smoke tests, try if things work the way I expect them to work. And that would get me to a working prototype with like another 30 minutes of work. So we went from pretty much nothing, just a spec sheet, to a running multi-container application that you could probably deploy somewhere. I mean, it's not doing anything useful, obviously, but it's got a database, it's got a backend. I mean, we could vibe code a front end in another 10 minutes. And the whole process you just watched was like, I don't know, honestly, 30 minutes, maybe? So this is the science fiction kind of stuff that gets everyone, particularly people that are non-programmers, super excited. And people say like, what do we even need programmers for anymore? But if you are a programmer and you ever worked in a decently sized project, that kind of stuff makes you nervous. Like there is so much code here, so much complexity. And well, obviously I don't have any real idea what actually happened in here. It kind of works. but it kind of works has always been a bad thing for applications that you want to be scalable and reliable and actually maintainable. Let's look at a scenario that's a lot more realistic for a real developer. Well, I've certainly been there. You're handed a software component that you pretty much have no idea about, and you're told, upgrade it to the latest Java version. What do you do now? First thing, you start reading all the code. You try running it, you try messing with it, try to understand what's actually happening. Guess what? Bob can help with that. Describe this project to me. Pretty simple. Okay. That is a nice little summary, but I would like to be more visual. Can you create an architecture diagram for me? Very interesting. It took it a few tries, but it self-corrected. Okay, that is not really readable. That is hard to read with the white text. There we go. That looks pretty good. And this gave me a pretty good idea of what's actually happening in this code base. But my task right now is not to actually change anything or add any new features, but to upgrade it from an old Java version to a new Java version. And unlike in the last example where we gave full control to the agent and let it go wild, here we are going to run a so-called workflow, and that uses a open rewrite recipe, which is a very much rule-based way of upgrading Java in a very deterministic way from one version to the other. But if you've ever used frameworks like that, you know they get you like 70% there. They do a lot, but it kind of never works on the first try. And that involves a lot of tinkering, and you gotta test a lot of new things just to make sure that everything works again as it used to. And if you're under time pressure, you might miss a few things. So at the end of the day, the modernized application might perform worse than the old version. You might introduce some very subtle little bugs that you're absolutely not aware of. This is one example where this shift left paradigm comes into play. By moving those tedious tasks to an agent, you as a developer have time and space to take care about the way more important things. Okay, enough talking. Let's get going here. Java modernization. Let's go. Okay, let's go check the prerequisites. Let's go do some. That's all coming from the recipe. You can actually pretty clearly see this modernization plan. That is all part of those open rewrite recipes. That we are in deterministic rule-based land right now. Java upgrade. Let's create a Git flow actually. We want to go from Java 1.8 that was auto-detected to Java 21. Okay, it says that it's basically compatible. And now let's run this recipe. Okay, now the interesting part. It completed this rule-based recipe, and now it's going to do the agentic part of it. It's going to use the agentic capabilities to implement the remaining necessary changes. This is what you as a developer would usually have to do. Nice. It did even create a nice flowchart for us of what happened. Let's take a look. This is beautiful. It explained what it did, all the issues that it identified, all the fixes that it did, and then what it did to verify it, and also the results of what it did to test it. I don't know about you, but back in my developer days when I had a task like that, I did not a documentation that was as good as this.